So, I have a question for current Jehovah's Witnesses. Do you think that former governing body member Anthony Morris lost the Holy Spirit? You have to wonder. The governing body has just released their latest GB update, and they didn't mention Anthony Morris's departure from the governing body at all. You think it would have been the perfect opportunity to at least say something about it. They must be very well aware of all the rumours and the speculation going on amongst ex-witnesses and current witnesses about Tony Morris's standing at the moment. Did he step down from the governing body because of ill health or something? A lot of witnesses seem to think that. But I think we've got every reason to think that perhaps he stepped down because he was disciplined. I mean, why else would the governing body update this month not mention it at all? It would be an extreme unkindness to say nothing and allow speculation and gossip to continue. So in my mind, I'm probably like 95% sure that Anthony Morris was demoted from the governing body because of wrongdoing. If that is the case, if in fact he was doing something, hiding a wrongdoing, or for example, maybe he was over drinking, over consuming alcohol, and I think we've got, quite a bit of evidence to kind of suggest that he may have a problem with that. For years and years, he's been slurring his speech. It's not up to the standard of the other governing body members or other brothers that have been given assigned talks at conventions and assemblies. He kind of mumbles and sort of goes like this, and word whiskers. Remember in our when we had the Theocratic Ministry School, we had that workbook that had different points to work on. I think he would get a W for just about everything. Word contractions, he'd say gonna, gotta, and and say yes, anyway. So his speaking wasn't up to the standard that one would expect for someone to have risen to the very top of the organisation. I mean, maybe he had something else going on where he couldn't, perhaps mentally or speech-wise, speak without slurring. I don't know. He also he's the governing body member that I found most offensive, because for one thing, he never looked warm. He never looked approachable and kindly. He always looked scolding and judgmental and sneering. He's got that kind of is that what it's called? Anyway, snarling, kind of a snarly look about him. And you'd think maybe his talks then would exhibit some warmth in them, but no, he gave some really horrible talks. And before I just do a quick rundown through his most memorable talks, and there's very few other governing body member talks that I remember, but they really stick in the brain, because they are not only offensive to those of us who leave, but to those who are among his flock that he's supposed to be leading. And I think some of them are particularly cruel and nasty. But what I want to say is, if he was in fact hiding a secret sin, like alcoholism, that he wasn't disciplined for. No, none of the governing body members were disciplining him for it. They were just, because it's been years that he sounded like he's had a drinking problem. If in fact he was carrying on a sin, which is a disfellowshipping offence, then can we expect Jehovah's Spirit to have been working through him? Or would he have lost Jehovah's Spirit? We were taught that the governing body, Jehovah's Spirit works through them to provide the spiritual food. So if he was hiding a sin, was the spiritual food that he was regurgitating from Jehovah? This is a question for Jehovah's Witnesses. Or was it not from Jehovah? And if it wasn't from Jehovah, if Jehovah's Spirit wasn't behind what he was saying, then should you be obeying those things that he said? And I think that's a pretty reasonable question to ask. So anyway, I'm going to just go through really quickly through some of the talks, and I probably missed out a lot of them, but I just jotted down very quickly. This one I remembered. I think everyone remembers talking about the lot of dead people. I think that was when he was talking about the human hot dogs, that people who are killed at Armageddon will be smelt like burning hot dogs split open. Not very nice. So I think he was trying to prepare his audience shock them really, to thinking about what Armageddon is going to be like, and do you want to be among those burning hot dogs? Ugh, just gross. Then he uses words like thinkingest. He said that Jehovah's people are the thinkingest people on the planet. I always remember the talk that he said that he was defining what dogma means and dogmatic. And he said that's one thing the governing body are not. They are not dogmatic. I thought, yeah, right. There was the talk about where he was trying to guilt the brothers and sisters into being out in the ministry. And he actually got them to visually, or to think of looking at their hands to see if they had blood on their hands. And if you hadn't been out in the ministry in a couple of weeks or something, then you'll have blood on your hands, and Jehovah's obviously not going to be happy with you, and you're going to be toasted Armageddon if you've got blood on your hands. There was the famous tight pants talk that the brothers in Italy were very upset about, especially. And he talked about Spanx, which I think he must have meant like tight yoga pants that a lot of women will wear when they're exercising. If he's got a problem with those things, I wonder what he thinks about swimming togs, Yeah, haven't heard him comment on swimsuits for women. And he talked about how the homosexuals are the ones designing these clothes, and don't you know that they just like to see you in tight pants? You laugh, but it's disgusting. And then he talked about the brothers in Italy not treating him very well. And he said that it's not him that they have to watch out for, but his big brother. So it's like, I'm going to get my big brother onto you. You be mean to me, I'll get my brother onto you. He sounds a bit like a thug or a gangster or something, doesn't he? Then there was that talk about if a brother isn't a ministerial servant by the time he's 23 years old, there's something wrong with him, and he's not marriage material. And then he had the audacity to say in another talk, don't judge, just stop it, And I thought, you are the one that are making up all these rules for the brothers and sisters to judge each other by, and then you tell them not to judge. He's the one, he sets the example in judging. Then there was a talk where he sort of criticised and kind of mocked a little bit the brothers in the past who had looked forward to Armageddon coming soon. And he related how he talked to his sons and alluded to the fact that it could be decades and decades away. So when he did that, he was kind of calling out the other governing body members, if you like, who have been saying how imminent Armageddon is. It's always just around the corner. So clearly he didn't think so. The talk about bribing your children to get baptized, where he said that, if your child was 16 and they weren't baptized, yet they wanted to get a driver's license, then a parent could hold that over their head and say, so you're old enough to get your driver's license, but not old enough to dedicate yourself to Jehovah. So basically endorsing parents blackmailing their children into being baptized. And then I think he gave another talk, a more recent one, where he actually told parents off for forcing their children to come to the meetings. So he goes from, he's speaking out of both sides of the mouth. He's very good at it. More recently too, after the decision in Norway to revoke their state funding, he very firmly said that they will not change their stance on how they treat disfellowshipped people. So very firm. He had a talk about higher education, where he said that the better the university, the greater the danger. And he said, your children can go to university and be influenced by the most eloquent and intelligent professors, something like that. Oh, how dangerous. Okay. There was the talk about enemies of Jehovah going up like a puff of smoke, and he did that little laugh as he does. A little gangster laugh. When COVID hit and people were very concerned about it, and lots of brothers and sisters were getting sick and dying, and he said, it doesn't bother me. He was expecting disease and all the supposed signs of the last days. So he said, it doesn't bother me. It just sounded very uncaring and tactless. Another thing that our dear Anthony Morris used to do is he'd embarrass people in his talks without actually naming people. He would relate little experiences he had, and they would know very well who he was talking about. There was a couple of there was a talk about where he mentioned a sister who had been to Gilead, and he was at some kind of function, and he had asked a brother a question about something, and she piped up and talked about her experience at Gilead, and he was scolding her. He was telling her off in this talk, and he said she had her mouth on, like, shut up woman, you're talking too much, I'm talking to a brother. So she would have known that he was talking about her, and other people who were present would probably know that might be who he was talking about. And it's the same as he mentioned a sister who asked him about marrying a brother, and he said to her about, if he's not a ministerial servant, if he's 23 and not a ministerial servant, then what's wrong with him? So he has a habit of shaming people, but without naming them, but saying enough that those people concerned would feel really embarrassed knowing that he was talking about them, and that's not a very kind thing for the leader of Jehovah's Witnesses to be doing. There was another talk about he was scolding parents if they had been to Disneyland, taken their children to Disneyland, but hadn't taken them to the Watchtower headquarters. And the one that he talked about, toddlers, when Armageddon comes, that a toddler who's got Jehovah's Witness parents might be okay at Armageddon. Jesus and him, Anthony Morris, they might just spare them if their parents were JWs. They might be safe. So it makes you think, all the other innocent children and babies, if they haven't got at least one parent who's a witness, then they're toast. Then there was the other talk about he was praising a child, Joshua, who died for lack of a blood transfusion, which was, pretty tactless. And then another talk where he said he was telling his listeners to stick to what we, the governing body, have authorised when they are looking at information, reading or watching stuff. Stick to what they have authorised. Yet earlier he said they're not dogmatic. So that's just a quick rundown on some of the talks that he's given, and there's probably more. I'm sure there'd be more. So you have to wonder, if all these talks were given under the influence of alcohol, can you say, Jehovah's Witnesses, that what he was saying was food from Jehovah? I really don't think you can. And the fact that it was such offensive material, offensive to the brothers and sisters, like pushing them away, repelling them, repulsing them, then I don't think you can say that it was from Jehovah through Jesus to them at all. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about the whole situation. Okay, bye.